Welcome back to the Testing Reality podcast. Today we're going to be talking about something that almost every QA engineer knows and every automation engineer feels and almost all organizations struggle with: automation coverage. And joining me today is Shoaib Ahmed, Director of Solution Engineering at QPilot. Thank you for being here, Shoaib.
Thank you. It's a pleasure being here.
Great. So Shoaib, most teams have been investing in automation for several years now. They've built frameworks, hired specialists, adopted the best practices, and yet somehow the coverage never seems to move as fast as the product itself, right? It's like buying the latest iPhone and playing catch up every single time. We want to be relevant, we want to be agile, but as soon as a new launch happens, again the market puts us on the back foot, right? So my question here is, why does this gap exist? Why does this continue to exist? Why are QAs still struggling to match with the velocity of the product releases and automation coverage?
So, because most organizations are trying to solve the problem by adding more effort rather than changing the model. So, when the coverage falls behind, the first reaction is usually, let's write more tests. It sounds reasonable. The problem is, every automation test still needs someone to create it, maintain it, review it, and fix it when things change. Meanwhile, the product teams are shipping features faster than ever. So it's bits like trying to empty your inbox while notifications are still turned on. You make progress, but the backlog keeps finding ways to stay alive.
Okay, so in some sense, you are saying that the issue isn't really, teams are not working hard enough.
Not at all. Most QA teams I work with are already operating at full speed. So the challenge is that traditional automation has a built-in ceiling. So the coverage grows linearly because human effort grows linearly. Applications don't. So they are adding features, platforms, user journeys, and integrations all at once. So eventually the gap becomes inevitable. So that's the reality, the thinking behind QPilot. So we stopped asking, how do we help teams write scripts faster? Instead, we asked, why are we still requiring people to write these scripts in the first place?
Well, that's an interesting shift, Shoaib, because it changes the starting point itself. So if you can just a little bit expound on, how does QPilot actually change the workflow?
So the biggest change is where automation begins. So in traditional automation, the process starts with technical implementation. Someone has to think about frameworks, selectors, locators, page objects, and all the other things that come with automation. With QPilot, it actually starts with an intent. So you simply describe what needs to be tested. It could be a requirement, it could be an acceptance criterion, or it could be just a plain English statement, for example, like a verify user login. Or it can also be a check a customer can complete a checkout, or even validating a fund transfer. Right? So QPilot understands what you're trying to achieve and generates the automation from there.
So instead of writing scripts, you're just describing the outcomes in some sense.
Exactly. And what's fascinating is how quickly that changes the conversations. So instead of spending an hour debating expert strategies, teams talking about customer scenarios and business risk, which honestly is probably why most of us got into quality engineering in the first place. I don't think anyone graduated and thought, one day, I hope I spend 3 hours debugging a locator. Right?
I'm sure nobody would want that.
Including me. So I have spent enough afternoons starting at failed locators to know that's not anyone's dream career path. But that's the opportunity here. Requirements already exist. User stories already exist. Acceptance criteria is already defined. Historically, somebody had to manually translate all of that into automation. So QPilot removes that translation step. Coverage starts getting into closer to the requirement itself. And when you remove the bottleneck, the automation backlog stops growing so aggressively.
Okay, well, that makes sense perfectly, right? But sure, generating tests is just one part of the equation, right? The real question is it sustainable? Because everybody listening here probably is thinking right now, that's great, but what happens next 6 months? Like, will I be able to use the script in the next sprint? Or will I be able to use the script when new features are added?
That's a brilliant question, Dimakar. and we factor that in as well. Now automation has two phases, right? So creating test and maintaining test. The second one tends to be where the real pain lives. We've all seen it. Maybe a button gets renamed, a UI component moves, a designer decides that the page should look cleaner, and suddenly 20 tests decide that they are no longer interested in participating.
It usually happens with every new release.
That's a universal law of software, right? So I have never seen a large test suite fail on a quiet Tuesday afternoon when nobody cares. I always seems to happen right before an important production release. And jokes aside, maintenance is one of the biggest problems in automation. Teams spend enormous amount of time figuring out whether a failure is actually a product issue or just automation reacting to the change.
Well, that's very interesting. But how do we tackle this, Shiva?
So with something called self-healing, Dinakar, when QPilot encounters a change, it doesn't immediately fail. So it attempts alternative strategies to identify the element and continue the execution. And if it succeeds, the test keeps moving and records what's that change. So if it can't recover, it provides a detailed context about what happened. So the goal isn't to magically eliminate every failure. The goal is to eliminate unnecessary failures. There's a huge difference, right? So because every false alarm steals attention from real problems. And engineering teams already have 3,300 Slack notifications competing for their attention.
And that's probably the most accurate description of any QE's notification bar.
For sure. Even my count is basically a performance metric at this point. But seriously, resilient automation creates trust. And trust is ultimately what makes automation valuable. When green means green and red actually means something important, team starts relying on automation again.
Well, great. So let's switch gears and talk about another piece of the puzzle here. Creating automation scripts is one thing, maintaining it is another. But running it somewhere meaningful is the holy grail of testing in my view, right? And I think that's where QPilot's connection to pCloudy's infrastructure becomes something more valuable for teams that are using it. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. One of the questions I always encourage teams to ask is not just, can this tool generate tests? It also, where are those tests going to run? Because execution quality matters a lot. So you can generate the world's most beautiful test script, but if it's running in an environment that doesn't reflect reality, you're still making decisions based on incomplete information. It's like testing your cricket shots exclusively in a video game and then expecting to dominate on an actual pitch. So the confidence might be high, the outcome will be very different.
And that's a very dangerous bet on confidence.
Exactly. And that's why we never gave it to chance. QPilot runs directly on pCloudy's device cloud and browser cloud infrastructure with real devices, real browsers, real operating systems, real execution environments. So the same infrastructure teams are already using for testing. That means the automation isn't taking a separate path. It's a part of the same ecosystem. So the reporting is the same, the evidence is the same, the visibility is the same, with videos, logs, screenshots, device level insights, all of it remains consistent.
So the confidence in the quality of the signal also doesn't change because we created scripts on AI, right?
Exactly. And at the end of the day, quality engineering is about confidence. Confidence that your testing reflects reality. So confidence that failures are meaningful. Confidence that releases are ready. And generating an automation is valuable. But generating trustworthy automation is where the real impact lies. And that's ultimately what we are trying to solve with QPilot.
I think that's a great place to wrap up, Shoaib, because what we've really discussed today isn't just automation speed, but automation at scale. And these insights on QPilot will help a lot of organizations, I'm sure, to increase their coverage and make automation trustworthy again. So thanks for joining in and sharing these insights about QPilot with us.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for having me here.